another amazing guest for you today. We have with us Samantha C. Prestidge. Samantha is the energetic CEO of Oxa Business Services, a virtual administrative and operations support agency that transforms mundane operational challenges into streamlined, collaborative opportunities for growth. Drawing on her corporate background, Lean Six Sigma Black Belt certification, and passion for efficiency, she helps leaders overcome roadblocks and achieve operational excellence. Samantha, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me today.
Oh, it's not no trouble at all, and we're definitely excited to have you on the show because we have a lot of things that we can dig into here for sure. But before we get too far, we do like to have a an icebreaker on the show, and the question for you today is: which cartoon character do you resonate with the most, and why?
Chris, I actually was looking at some of your past episodes and I was anticipating this icebreaker. And I went to ChatGPT, which is a huge tool for just productivity in general. And based on, I guess, how I've trained ChatGPT, it related me to Miss Frizzle. And I actually really appreciate that because I have a 5 and 2.5 year old boys, and so we have watched the Magic School Bus, and I absolutely love Miss Frizzle. It's like, hey, here's some chaos, here's some mess. How can we learn from it? Let's just have some fun, learn along the way, and like it's gonna be a little bumpy, but it's gonna be okay. And plus, I don't have ginger here, but I do got the curly frizzles going on. So Miss Frizzle is my cartoon character.
I think that's the first time that I've heard somebody say Miss Frizzle. And I really like that. I don't know if it's the new Magic School Bus or the old one, but I definitely watched the old one, so I can definitely know who that is. But
Yeah, the newer ones, her dresses aren't as like fun and patterned. Her hair is not as frizzy. And I'm like the whole minimalist style is taken Miss Frizzle down the wrong way aesthetically, at least for me. I was used to crazy Miss Frizzle back in the day.
no, I think that's just the natural sort of progression of the show, though. Too. I mean, Miss Frizzled is frazzled from like how many years have you been teaching them? Yeah, right?
She should be calm by now. She should be able to deal with all the curveballs at this point.
Should be able to. You know.
Yeah.
All right. So Samantha, why don't you tell us what is procrastination for you? How do you define it, and what does it mean to you personally?
Yeah, it's interesting because I definitely procrastinate on a lot of things personally, and then also professionally. My clients procrastinate on so much, and that's why we do have to dive into like team performance issues and stuff. And when it comes down to it, I really look at procrastination as like delayed potential. We are putting something off because just the value of completing it or the value of pushing through and starting it and overcoming the challenge of starting it, that value is just not clear to us. And so we will just continue to put something off and delay the potential of that until we've got the urgency, the confidence, and the momentum around it to do it and complete it. So procrastination really boiling down to just delaying the potential of something.
I like that. I like that definition for sure. Delaying the potential, and we know that there's no silver bullet or no single answer that works for everybody. But you know, what has been your secret sauce for overcoming procrastination?
Mm. I I do have a like it's kind of like a hodgepodge of different strategies. I think though, if like just to like if we were to cut to the chase, it really does come down to like self-awareness. You've got to be open to learning yourself and figuring out what works for you. Like I have a lot of people that come to me on like time management strategies and productivity. I'm like, sure, we can dive into a bunch of ideas, but unless you want to experiment on all of these ideas, it's going to take you a while to figure out the strategy that works well for you. Like for instance, we're talking productivity. I know if I'm like maybe procrastinating on something and I'm like dilly dallying and I'm like, I actually have a big project to do. Well, now it's time for me to put my earphones in, like noise canceling, and listen to some jazz music or something. And then I'm laser focused for 2 hours. Or if I know that I'm traveling, I know I need to bring my mouse, my external mouse, because mouse pads and track pads, I'm not productive on those at all. So there's like little things that I've taken the time to learn about me that now help with when it comes to productivity or when it comes to not procrastinating on something. So we can definitely dive into some of the strategies I've learned, but at the end of the day, it does come down to how well do you know yourself?
And that's often a very scary question for a lot of people because we don't really want to, do you ask yourself some of these questions like, do I really want to know the answer to that?
Yeah, like, it's not therapy time. Let's just stay in our comfort zone and, just pretend like we've got it all together.
Hey, sounds like a plan to me. I can do that until next Friday. So, so why don't you tell us a little bit about the work that you do, in OXO Business Services. You guys do support. What else do you guys do?
Yeah, so mainly under OXA, we focus a lot around process improvement and really looking at how are we moving projects or work through our teams and going from sales to project delivery to cash management. Really, what does that process look like, and how are we balancing the people aspect of stuff? Because unless you've got a fully automated manufacturing robotic factory, you have to take people into account when you're looking at efficiency, right? So we take a lot of time to understand that, and then we also look at management coaching and helping people to, again, manage that people aspect of their teams. If maybe we don't really have a process issue or software automation issue, it's really more of just like our communication or how we're holding people accountable. Maybe they're procrastinating and we're missing deadlines, and how do we navigate that as a new or mid-level manager? So that's really what we do under OXO. We also have a virtual assistant like to what we do. So we'll pair remote administrative or executive assistants that are based in the US with business owners or managers just to help them get stuff done. Because sometimes it's not about that you're putting it off. You just do not have enough time in the day, and that's okay. Let's make sure we can get it done and you can still go home and enjoy dinner with your kids or something.
Hmm. And that definitely sounds like a service that everybody needs at some point or other, for sure. My question to you is this: in your experience, again, everybody's different. Every small business is different. Every large business is different. But do you believe that fundamentally it's all about the people involved, or could it also be the processes and the training that these processes have?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the people are the ones building the processes, right? So that's usually a huge factor of what we're looking at. And sometimes it really just is we haven't established any kind of standard, or we're still living in the Stone Age and we don't have the software to support the goals and vision of what you want to accomplish. And so it really is just about let's take the time to talk to people and interview them and understand what's going on, and then take the time to understand from the owner or that manager what they're hoping to achieve. A lot of times I ask questions that people just aren't used to thinking of. It's just questions of, oh, well, now that you say this, now I'm thinking through XYZ. And so just no one has posed this new idea for them. So yeah, it is a people issue most of the time, but I don't want to say that in a way that like holds it against them or that they're necessarily doing anything wrong. They recognize that they're in a kind of crappy situation, that they're stressed out and things are not as good as they could be, and they just don't know the way out of it.
Mhm. No, I'm glad that you sort of brought that up because one of the things and I'm sure you've seen this a lot, um, especially when you talk about managers and promoting someone to manager for the first time. And I've been through this. I'm sure you've been through this at some point. You are a good worker, and then you go into management. There's no management training on how to deal with people. It's, oh, you're a great salesperson, or oh, you're a great customer service person, then you must be a great customer service manager by extension, right? um, how often do you see that kind of mentality in the workplace?
Way more often, right? It is actually a very super common concept, and that's where you see now. There's a lot of reports, kind of with Gen Z continuing to grow up in the workforce. You're starting to see this kind of labor shortage of management roles, where people are maybe being offered a management role and then rejecting it. They're like, "No, I don't need that pay raise. I'm not interested in that. I'm kind of happy at this frontline level role or this specialist role." Because managers, especially when you're new and you've just gotten promoted, you're in a kind of shitty sandwich, if that's okay to say, or just a poor, crappy sandwich where you're now in between employees that you are responsible for their performance. You're responsible for keeping turnover low, and these employees are now coming in with a world of expectations, not just around salary and benefits, but also around their hybrid working schedules or around culture and stuff. So you've got all these voices kind of expecting a lot from you as the manager, the parent of the team. And then you have to report to your leadership, right? So what's the KPIs and the numbers that you're supposed to be reporting to your senior manager or VP or whoever on, and you're just sandwiched in between company goals and then frontline employee expectations. And that puts a lot of pressure on a manager, especially when they have no support and no training.
So, and this might be a little bit of a difficult question, maybe. Do you think that maybe the biggest issue that we're having just in general is that maybe we have too many expectations, whether that be on the side of we expect too much from our employees, or whether that it's on the side of the employees expecting too much from the company. Do you think that expectations are a main source of the issue?
I don't actually think it's a matter of too many expectations. I think it's a matter of very unclear expectations. So it's a lot of things start to get frustrating because it feels like there's a lot being expected of you because you actually don't know what you're supposed to be delivering on. And one of the first things we have to teach managers, actually something that we work on with even CEOs who have been in the role for decades or have owned their own company for so many years, the first thing we have to say is like, well, what does success look like for you from this team? We've got to get clear on that, especially with visionary type of leaders. They will kind of babble on about, oh, well, this is what I want from them and da da da. And it's like, well, let's get specific. What is the actual expectation here? Because you have like 30 things that are very unclear. And maybe that's why it feels like there's too many expectations, but there's 30 things that are unclear and no one really knows what an achievement looks like on this team. And so I mean, there are instances where there's a little bit of entitlement. Like I've worked with a team where they had a project coordinator ask for 3 raises in the first like 2 weeks or something. It's like that's too many expectations. Let's calm down a little bit. But also, if like expectations around professional development and growing in your role, if that was made clear, during onboarding or something, maybe we wouldn't be in this situation, right? So there's a lot of different ways you can approach that.
And just in terms of productivity, what are your go-to tools right now for productivity?
Ooh, go to. I used to just like really push monday.com. I love monday.com if you've got a team and you've got complex projects. I've kind of have shifted away from it because if you don't have complex projects, it is a very kind of overwhelming system. It could be amazing if you take the time to set it up. But right now I am going on Notion, and I love Notion because it's so easy to like say, hey, here's some information, here's an SOP, here's a client info sheet, and then here's all like the tasks and boards we have to do around that. So I even have a board on it called organizing my brain, and everything just kind of gets dumped there. It's one of kind of my time management strategies I use in conjunction with my calendar time blocking. But yeah, if you haven't used Notion or you haven't used any kind of task management tool, I would definitely recommend trying one out, or even just using like the task features on Google alongside with your calendar. Just start somewhere, but get a system.
And do you find that time blocking is more effective for companies than say just like sprints or something like? I guess it depends on the company, right? But
Yeah.
is it effective for them to time block and try to set up a system for internal, or is it more effective for individuals to try and do that within the tasks that the company has set out?
Time blocking is definitely going to be a more personal thing. Obviously, if you have a team or a group working on something, then you should maybe be time blocking those group meetings, or when you need to report on certain milestones. But it's going to be a little bit more personal, and it also doesn't work for everybody. There are some like super ADHD people where putting everything into a calendar and then moving it to the next day if it doesn't get done today, like that's just way too much to ask them, right? And that's not going to be an effective strategy for them. That goes back to just knowing yourself. But then you have like my husband and some other managers. I definitely recommend time blocking because a lot of times people don't know what all is on your plate. So you don't need to give them full access to your calendar. But if they can see all your busy times, and so that way you can block off, like, oh, you actually need 45 minutes to do this freaking report or something, block it off in your calendar so no one else can book a meeting with you. And then they can start to see how your week fills up super quickly. And that also helps with expectations like, oh, this person can't get back to me by the end of the day. Look at all the stuff that they've got going on. Let me give them some grace and we'll follow up in a day or two on that, you know?
And what would you say is the I'm not going to call it a mistake, but the
Hmm.
biggest sort of thing that inconveniences most businesses when it comes to productivity, and that they think it's helpful, but it's really not.
Oh, that is a great question. I don't know if this is like, I don't know if anyone would really think that this is helpful, but I think just like complaining about the issue. A lot of times I do meet with people and the issues that they've known or they've known about the issues for months or years and they just have pushed off solving the problem or they've pushed off letting go of a problem employee or something like that. And it's just really, what are you trying to accomplish and what do you want this team to look like, and let's start taking action to do that. So I think the biggest productivity killers are really just recognizing that there is maybe a problem with your software, a problem with your employee, or a problem with something, and then being extremely indecisive about that. There are some companies that have pushed off a proposal with me, not because of budget, but just because they were nervous about starting. And then 8 months later, they're dealing with the same issues. And I'm like, okay, no judgment. I'm like, I'm so sorry that you're still dealing with this 8 months later, but are we ready to take some baby steps to solving that?
And when you say that they're nervous about starting, is it because they're worried about making the wrong decision, or is it they're worried about how it's going to turn out, or what is their main concern?
Yeah, we can. There might be a little bit of, actually, not might be. For a lot of people, I do think it's, oh, like I can't imagine this being solved. So sometimes there's a lot of comfort in just the negativity that we know. There's a lot of comfort in like, hey, I really don't know what success would feel like for me, and that's kind of scary. And so I'm just going to kind of continue going on with this problem. And that's in the professional and in the personal area, right? There are some people who, I'm not dissing mental health at all, but there's some people that probably don't really need to see their therapist anymore. They just need to take some baby steps in some action, right? And but they're just kind of scared of what would happiness in this area look like. And so I do think for a lot of people there is nervousness around, if I solve this one problem, will then a bigger problem come up from it, or will this not really solve the problem? And a lot of things in business is just, let's take a risk and we're going to make a plan to hope for the best. We'll be prepared for the worst, but we've got to make some kind of decision. And that is the worst thing, whether in your personal or professional life, just not making a decision that can ruin things way more than making the wrong choice. I don't, have you experienced that with your, either in your own coaching business or in your own life with your family?
Oh, yeah, all the time. But interesting side note: not making a decision is still a decision. It's literally
Yes,
impossible.
absolutely.
It's literally impossible to not make a decision, because even if you're not deciding, you're deciding to not make the decisions.
Yeah, you're deciding to procrastinate on it and to just not deal with that. You're just in denial of what's going on with it.
Yeah, exactly. So then, where do you stand on the need for putting things off for like self care? I mean, in a lot of
Mm.
businesses, sometimes they don't take a lot of time off, especially small business owners. I mean, I've been there. You've probably been there. You work those 80-hour weeks or 90-hour weeks, 100-hour weeks. I don't know how many hours are in a week, but I could probably keep going. Um, how do you sort of take that time out to really take care of yourself first?
I am pro rest and pro self care all the way, because I might get some of the numbers on this wrong. Um, but there's a lot of research behind really what's the max amount of work you can do in a week and still be productive. And it's something like after, like between 45 to 55 hours or something, your productivity plateaus. So you're not more productive. And then after 55 hours, it actually goes staggeringly down. And so if you were to work 70 hours, you're actually not more productive than working at 55 hours, which is 15 hours that you could have spent playing with your kids, going to get a massage, playing golf, like whatever your thing is, going to do that. And so I do not agree with like productivity is more, productivity is less. It's more time focused on what actually matters. And so like I with my iPhone, I take full advantage of all the focus settings you can have on your iPhone. Like there, I between or before the hours of 9 a.m. and after 5:30, it's on a focus setting called living time, and only text and calls from family and friends come through. I don't get any emails, LinkedIn notifications, nothing comes through. Also, that's what's on during the weekends. I make sure there's like a lunch on my calendar every day. I don't like working lunches. I like to sit and watch something and turn my brain off to eat. Granted, I don't get a workout in every day, but I do read my Bible every day. There's certain things that have to take priority for me to then show up as my best self. And if I'm not taking care of myself, then it doesn't really matter what I try to accomplish that day. I'm not putting my best foot forward, and that's not fair to my team or to my clients.
No, you put it well. That you put it really well there. I mean, you can't pour from an empty cup, and if you're not taking care of yourself, you're biting the head off of your coworker, or maybe even your boss. I mean, I've been there. Like,
Hopefully not. Or hopefully you have a really understanding boss.
oh well, but I'm sure you've been there too. The constant things, and then there's one thing. It's not probably not even work that's bothering you. It's maybe something at home. And then that one thing is like overwhelming you, and it's making everything overwhelming. Just bite the other person's head off because they're just there.
Oh yeah, I am. I remember in my youth, I don't know, I was 18 or 19. I had a coworker just tell me like, "Oh, you've got to get better at compartmentalizing." Right, like turning off the emotions when you come to work. Probably like was not with a good boyfriend at that time, right? So as a young adolescent girl, you bring all your emotions with you everywhere. And I have somewhat resented that. Now granted, yeah, don't show up to your workplace and have like a full on meltdown, and I don't know what people do, but show up with some decorum and professionalism, but also accept that your life is life. You can't just like turn off your personality. You can't just turn off all your issues when you walk into your office building, and extend the same grace that you would hope someone would extend to you when you're having a bad day.
You hit on something interesting there, and it kind of segues into this next sort of set of questions. Um, you said there you got to sort of not turn emotions off, but what is your stance on AI and implementing it in your business? And I mean, I've seen some crazy ideas where they want to. Some companies they want to replace all the low level workforce, but they want to
Mm.
have mid level managers. Others have said we'll keep the low level workforce, but we'll get rid of the mid level managers, replace it with an AI. Until some cases they've even said like, oh well, the AI could probably run the company. Where do you stand on that?
I think I actually just saw this morning. It was like an IBM memo from like the 70s or something. And the statement was just a computer should not make a management decision. So I am all for AI and leveraging it. I use ChatGPT quite often. There's certain software there where there is an AI component. And when it makes sense to use it, definitely leverage it. I do think though you've got to really understand what are you trying to accomplish with it. For instance, like I'm pretty techie. Whenever I sign up for a new software, I can figure it out for the most part, or I can figure out the help articles. Every now and again, you do need to reach tech support. I find it extremely frustrating when I've got to wait 18 to 20 minutes on a chat and it's still an AI bot or something, and my question is not answered. So, if you're going to replace something with AI, is that best serving your customers? And are you just making a decision based off of savings a few cents on your bottom line, or are you making a decision that is actually going to benefit the quality of your product? And that's what I really think it comes down to. You made a comment on like mid-level managers. There are some cases where you have way too many layers of management, and so can you help a certain layer of management use AI so that they're more productive and they have kind of less just tedious tasks on their plate. And maybe you can remove a whole level of management because you didn't really need it in the first place, right? So God, let's evaluate the efficiency. Let's evaluate really the structure of the team and who's doing what. But at the end of the day, we still got to keep our customers in mind, and also how valuable is it for the actual team that might be using it.
I like that. And, with this discussion and just getting into wherever the future is going, I mean, I've, some of the simulations have been pretty, I mean, they've been pretty real.
Hmm.
Um, do you think that, we're going to get to a point where, and they've had this argument with the abacus, and, the abacus was that little thing where, you count the little beads, to the calculators in schools, to the automated cash checkouts in grocery stores. Do you think that we're going to come to a point where we rely on AI too much, maybe, and that's going to potentially be detrimental to us in the future?
Oh, for sure. Right. I mean, like, how many movies have predicted this from like Will Smith and iRobot to freaking Ready Player One, right? Humans are. I know that, in our kind of pre talk before the show, you seem to not like the word lazy. But I do think for the most part, humans tend to gravitate toward whatever is easiest. Most of us do not like consistent challenge. We want to find the easiest path, the path of least resistance. And AI provides that for a lot of us. And it's extremely easy to use in some cases, which means it's extremely easy to become reliant on it. Anytime you introduce anything that can ease your day, there's the risk of becoming reliant on it, right? Like, my husband's an amazing partner. I'm somewhat reliant on him. The same thing can happen with AI as it continues to develop and evolve with us. Also, shout out to anyone that's seen Ready Player One. Very good movie.
No, no, yeah, Ready Player One was a pretty good movie. I actually can't wait for that one because I get paid to play video games. but
There you go.
yeah, just to go back to that comment about being lazy or looking for discomfort. I mean, that is true. The path to least resistance is something we're always looking for. I mean, we are creatures of comfort. Ever since we could you know stop running through the woods naked and afraid, and we've built tools and done other things. I mean, it's always been to try and avoid discomfort. I mean, that has been the real mother of invention. And Michael Singer actually writes a pretty good passage in his book, The Untethered Soul, about that. He says that he calls it the thorn in the so you get the thorn in your hand, right? And rather than pull the thorn out, which would be like 10 seconds of discomfort, you bandage it up so that so that it doesn't hurt anymore. Okay, well then you notice that you bang it on your door or desk or something and you realize it hurts. So then you make a cast around it, and then you make it bigger, and now it's heavy. So now you need to have a support for the arm, and now you realize that the support for the arm doesn't mean you can't get through the door. So now you have to make a door. So in our I guess our hurry or our haste to try and avoid discomfort, we're actually causing ourselves more discomfort.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely something I see all the time with my clients when it comes to processes of just, okay, tell me why you do this. And the answers, it's just kind of this going around in a circle of why they do something. And it's like, well, we just really need a simple line from A to B. Instead, you've put B after Z and you have all these steps to get there, and you've built a process that is just way more complicated. In my world, we call it the band-aid solutions. Is you do the same thing in the health space, right? You tell a doctor symptom, they prescribe something rather than like what's the root cause. And so that happens in teams, it happens in processes, it happens for ourselves as business owners, right? Your content management strategy is not working, so you want to add more and more and more content instead of cleaning up your original messaging, right? We have a tendency to just want to abandon something that's somewhat difficult and run over to something that feels a little bit easier. And that's how we end up in a situation where nothing is easy and we've got to untangle a whole bunch of stuff.
I like how you read that we're very much an additive society. We tend to look at problems and we always need to add things. So, you know, you yeah, and this happens all the time. I mean, if you want to go on a diet, you don't necessarily take foods out. You just say, "Oh, I'll add exercise," or "Oh, I'll add more stimulants to lose weight," or "I'll add these pills," or whatever the medicine is.
Mhm.
But how often is it true, like you were just saying, with content plans, with processes? How often has it been true where by simply just removing one or two aspects, it actually made things better?
Oh, I mean, there's probably like 60% of the time where really a process is improved just by cleaning up how much one person is doing and taking away certain steps that are just laborious but add no value. And when we do that, we want to say, really, what's the value of the customer, whether that's internal or external, and what are we really trying to accomplish? That's kind of the main theme in a lot of what I do around processes or teaching a manager how to give really good feedback, right? Or even just, hey, you want to delegate to this assistant. You've had high turnover with assistants. So, what are you trying to accomplish by delegating? Let's just go back to what that first goal is, and then we can work from there. So, a lot of times, less is more. And when you feel like you do need more, well, can we automate? Does this really need to be an actual task on someone's plate? Or can we automate? Or does it really not that have that much value? And so it's really just simplify, take out, productivity is less.
I like that. Less is more. My question to that would be, and I've come across this, I'm sure you have too. When you try to automate processes, I mean, you should probably know how those processes work before you automate them, right? Or does that matter?
Yes, yeah, you should know how they work first, because essentially you could end up setting a whole bunch of automations that takes time to set those up, and then if they break, then you don't really know, then you've got to go back and fix them. And so if you can simplify what exactly is the process in the first place, maybe we don't need to pay for Zapier or some other tool to automate this stuff. Maybe we just delete that step, or we find a different software that is going to work for you. I definitely would not recommend trying to automate certain tasks just because something feels clunky. I would start with evaluating what that process and what the workflow should be in the first place.
No, I like that. But what about automating processes that you don't understand? I mean, right now it's all the buzz, right? AI. You've got there's literally, I'm going to say hundreds of thousands of tools now, probably, and they do everything from being a personal assistant to your email to SEO. And SEO is something that a lot of people don't know anything about, and yet they're going out there and they're going to trust this AI to do the best job it can. Is that um, how do you view that? Like, should you know like what it's doing before you kind of set it out, or
Yeah, so I will admit that I a lot of our processes do focus a little bit more on like the team collaboration perspective. So I'm not spending like all day every day automating things, and I'm not up to date on like all the different AI software that's out there. However, I did listen to a speech that was, I'm going to totally blank on his name, but he's worked with Microsoft back in the 90s. He worked with Google to launch Gemini, which is Google's AI. And something he had spoken about was there's a big difference between AI and software. And what we think is AI is really just software, where you're putting in certain inputs and it's creating outputs based off of that, right? Rather than like actual artificial intelligence. And so at the end of the day, it's only as good as, for the most part, most AI tools are only as good as the information you're putting in. So SEO probably could do really great wonders for you because SEO is an algorithm and math and mathematical game anyway. But are you giving it the right information and the right market research data to create a good SEO plan for you? Right. So really, what are you doing there? Like there's AI for personal assistance. Like that's one of the big taglines for Motion, which is a calendar and task management platform. You know what? It doesn't just magically read your emails and magically read whatever else you've got going on and then say, oh, this is what you're supposed to be working on. You still have to enter in the projects and your estimated time and your estimated priority level for that, for then Motion to set your calendar. So there's still quite a bit of like data entry that goes into it.
I understand that, and you mentioned about the team collaboration. In your opinion, what is the biggest sort of roadblock or hurdle when it comes to team collaboration?
Probably going back to expectations. We want things to be easy and we don't extend grace to other people. If you don't like, if someone else doesn't understand what all you've got going on in your plate, maybe they're holding you to a really high expectation, or they haven't communicated what their expectation is from you. So maybe you think you have 2 days, or maybe you think this is the right format for something and you send it off to them and then they're still frustrated because you haven't clarified what the expectations are around that. Uh, we also want things to be easy, which means we don't take accountability for a lot of stuff. And this is a huge generalization. Okay. Like there's also a bunch of wonderful team players, wonderful managers out there. I'm not putting myself on a pedestal. This is a huge generalization of a lot of people in the workforce, right? But for the most part, we do want things to be easy. And so that just means if something's going wrong, it's way easier for me to complain about this other team dropping the ball rather than for me to say, oh, how can I have a service attitude? How can I help them out so that they can then help me? Right. And that goes into also extending grace. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe no one has explained a process or a project or a customer to them and they just don't know. Can we talk to them with some humility and try to get on the same page? And can we understand that when they win, we win also?
You know, what you just said sort of took me back there. It just got me thinking about my third grade. I think it was my third grade teacher, maybe in fourth grade. I don't know. That and Miss Frizzle, she got me thinking about it. When you're pointing a finger at someone, you really you have three fingers pointing back at you.
Yeah, like we're not supposed to judge others. You judge someone the same way that you would judge yourself. And maybe if you judge yourself very harshly, then that is not the best advice. Maybe you're one of the people that should still be in their therapy sessions, okay? But yeah, you point the finger, then you're really just pointing fingers back at yourself. And how are you holding yourself accountable? If you're gonna go tell someone that they missed the ball on something, then is there anything that you also messed up on that you can own up to in that conversation as well? And maybe there's not. Maybe you were handy dandy, freaking awesome, perfect in this one situation and it's really on them. That's okay. That happens too. But let's have a little bit of reflection and awareness first before we just like dive in on someone.
Well, and that's a tale as old as time, and sort of a pain point in a lot of organizations, right? Where you have a middle level manager or project manager that's only as good as the development team or building team or whatever team he has. And he kind of has to take the brunt of the blame for everybody because he's like, well, it was really the developer's fault, but you're the face, so you have to you have to own up and sort of fix that, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're in the shitty sandwich, right? If anything goes well, it's not because you're awesome, it's because your team is awesome. And if anything goes wrong, it's completely your fault, right? That's just kind of the position you're in. Granted, like I could pick and pull that apart. Like maybe there was something earlier on in that process, there was a red flag, a warning flag, or something, or we could have talked to that development team to fix something before it got to that point, right? We can pick and pull that apart. But hey, it still happened. You got to own up to it and then try to make sure it doesn't happen again.
No, for sure, for sure. Just swinging back really quick on the self care aspect, there was something I wanted to ask you. I'm sure everybody by now has read or heard of Tim Ferriss and the 4 day work week, and I know that we're not productive past. I think it's like 8 hours. Once you get past 8 hours, you lose like 22% of your productivity for every hour after, or something like that. But in your experience, have you seen a major difference between the companies that were able to, or the businesses that were able to do the 4 day work week versus the 5 day?
Most of the companies I've worked with are still on a 5 day schedule. I do see a huge difference with companies that maybe have some remote or hybrid flexibility in their schedules. I know for me personally, I've done 3 day and 4 day work weeks throughout the time of me owning my business, and I certainly feel way more productive. When it's a 5 day work week, I'm a little bit more lackadaisical. I'm like, oh, this can get done on Friday. It's fine. I'll have like an hour and a half for lunch instead of just 45 minutes or 30 minutes, right? So I kind of extend some of that self care time in the other days of the week if I know I'm working Monday through Friday. Versus if I'm only working 3 or 4 days, then I have definitely time blocked my calendar and I know what I'm trying to accomplish. And so it's like, oh yeah, I have accomplished more in less time, or I've accomplished the same amount of stuff in less time. And that feels more productive psychologically.
No, no, for sure. Being more productive is always something, but then there's always that factor of being busy, right? Busy, busy
Yeah.
versus productive. How often are they busy but not productive?
Oh, too often, way too often, there's busyness over productivity. And so, if we were to do it like a time audit of really walk me through what your day is, then it's like, well, we're just busy. And so, I've also made like the intentional shift, and I'm not always perfect of this, but I've made the shift of, instead of saying I did not have time for something, it's I haven't made time for this. Like, there are other things that are more important right now, or this is important and I totally forgot about it, so I didn't make time for it. And one of my, talking about books, one of my favorite books is 4,000 Weeks, and it is the healthiest approach to productivity. It's something that I've been echoing, and so I'm like, cool. There's validation on my philosophy because someone became a New York Times bestseller off this book. But 4,000 Weeks is pretty much like, on average, you'll have 4,000 weeks in your lifetime. Not everything is going to happen within those weeks. There are some things that just will not fit onto your plate. There's not enough time in the day, matter of fact. So, what do you want to accomplish and what is not that important? Do you want to show up at soccer games with your kids on Saturday, or are you going to be doing work? Like, right? Like, what's the priority in your life? And then build your time and build your calendar around that.
I like that. I do like that. 4,000 weeks, just for everybody out there trying to do mental math. It's about 76 years. Um, Man, what do you do with all the time after? I'm the eternal optimist. We should live longer than that. Samantha, it's been a really great conversation. There's been some really great points in here. We are coming up pretty close to the time. Is there anything that you wish I would have asked but didn't ask, or anything that we should have covered that we didn't cover today?
Yeah, if we want to go back to at the start of the episode, I said it takes a lot to really figure out your productivity and your procrastination and figuring out some of those strategies. And we talked about, there's that your procrastination can really just be translated as delayed potential. You're putting something off, and you're going to keep putting it off until you have the urgency, confidence, and momentum. And so, if the biggest things I could help with or help to clarify on that is, the urgency is really coming down to the goals, right? Like, what do you want to accomplish and how important is it that you accomplish that? Do you have the confidence? Are you in your comfort zone? Is it a little bit outside of your comfort zone, but that's okay because we don't have to run away from discomfort? And do you have the momentum to keep going or to start it? And that can come down to accountability. I mean, you have in one of your links on your YouTube page, I think it's Focus Mate or something, which is about co-working and accountability. Um, I use my virtual assistant team to hold me accountable. I have to be at risk of disappointing you. I have to be at risk of feeling bad that you followed up too many times with me on something. And okay, now I'll do it. So really have those three things: that urgency, confidence, and momentum around something. And you might just see that you are excited to start it rather than continuing to push it off.
Wow, that's a really strong note to end on. I really love that. Just before we go, what's the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you? Maybe ask some questions, or maybe even work with you.
Yeah, LinkedIn is going to be the best place because I have a few different businesses, kind of depending on what you're looking for, a few different ways to brainstorm and help with you. So if you looked up Samantha C. Prestidge on LinkedIn, happy to connect with you and DM or hop on a call with me.
And just as always, don't worry about grabbing a paper and pen or trying to figure out how to spell that. We are going to have that link for you in the show notes so that you'll be able to easily get there. Again, Samantha, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in once again. And just remember, if you can't find that motivation or inspiration for yourself today, maybe just go out and try to be that inspiration or motivation for someone else. And we'll see you again next time.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
A little bit of a crisis maker, I see.